What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here, NJ.com, the latest episode of the No Huddle Show. I'm here with Kaye. The Eagles just lost to the Dallas Cowboys 27-20. They're 4-5 on the season now. They still have a chance at the division, that's just the reality, but this is as low as they've been this season. They can't win 2 games in a row. All the problems they've had all year are still here, and at this point, we just have to accept that they're an average football team.
I don't know if you can call them an average football team.
I mean, maybe that's being generous because they don't even have a 500 record. So
this is a team that really lacks not just an identity, but an ability to put together a full game. It's
amazing.
Even when they win, it's not. It's not.
You don't feel great coming out of it. Any of those wins.
The Giants win would be the one. But it's weird because they're in every single game, so you can't completely
discount them.
Yeah, dismiss them. That said, this team can't close.
They can't
open. They can't start. They can't stop.
It's like a sandwich with stale bread. Like the meat of the sandwich is fine, but the bread is stale.
I talked to Jordan Hicks after the game, and he said he kind of laughed or sighed to himself and just said, if we could put it together. The defense playing well in the first half, the offense playing well in the second half. If they could actually put together a full game, they could be really talented or really successful. Well, duh.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those things where when's this going to happen? If it's not going to,
we're in week 10 right now.
They're 2-3 at Lincoln Financial Field.
That's that's unheard of. That just doesn't happen.
But. Or at least in their winning seasons.
Yeah, well, there's your thing right there.
Can we talk about the main thing that this game just really proved? I don't know if Doug Pederson lost his way. I don't know if it's Frank Reich and John DeFilippo. I don't know what it is. This team cannot script an opening set of plays
to save their lives.
To say that, this is they cannot. I think they've scored. How many touchdowns have they scored in the first quarter this season?
I actually wrote that in my story that I posted online. Keep talking and I'll pull it up.
I'm just kind of at a loss because this team was so good at starting off games last
Doug
year.
is supposed to be, play calling is his thing. Even Zack Ertz is I'm not going to second-guess Doug. He's the best player caller I've ever played with. And fine, but the first, how do you, every week, those are the plays they practice the most, right?
Right,
is that what a script?
You script
the rest is
plays.
Improvising or whatever. But
Andy Reid was an incredible script guy. He would come in and he would have 15 plays. You'd be up 14-3, and then you had the defense to close it during the really good years. Now it's just kind of this is the reverse Andy Reid. Andy Reid didn't do well late in games when he had to adjust. Pederson's doing that. The problem is it's too late. I wrote that the Eagles took too long to find a rhythm in this game, and that seems to be the case all the time. The one game they started off strong was against the Colts.
Yeah, and when you go 3-and-out to start every game, it's not a good recipe. So they've been outscored 32-21 in the first quarter.
So 3
touchdowns.
Had
3 touchdowns, and I think 2 of them came in one game. No, not in the first. In the first quarter, yeah. I think they came in that Giants game or
the Colts game.
The Colts game,
yeah.
And they also have only scored 7 total points in the first quarter at home.
I just think then that wouldn't be the Colts game. It would be the Giants game. Yeah. You're right. Sorry, good call.
But that just. You can diagnose a lot of their problems, but it starts at the beginning in a way.
It's a very good place to start. It really.
They went 3-and-out today, I believe, right?
Yes, they did. They asked Golden Tate.
And it was weird play calls too.
Yeah, they asked Golden Tate on his first play of the game to take a screen pass.
I'll run through the 3 plays right here. First play, Carson Wentz pass short down the middle to Zack Ertz for 1 yard. Second play, Josh Adams left end for no gain. Third play, Carson Wentz pass short left. It was a screen pass to Golden Tate for 7 yards. He was tackled by DeMarcus Lawrence. Wasn't even really close to the first down.
The first 2 plays you can't really pinpoint because it's just a little bit. I don't have a problem running Josh Adams on second down. I don't know who his primary target was on the 1st and 10 where he hit Ertz for 1 yard. The screen pass is clearly going to Golden Tate. Golden Tate's first play of the game, he caught a pass, and you're asking him to go 9 yards on 3rd and 9 on his first play of the game. He's coming off the bet. I just like...
Where's that aggression that he used to have? Like, there's not aggressive on those scripted plays.
No, where he was aggressive, like, I agreed with going for it on...
Yeah.
So, in the what was it? It was the first... No, it wasn't the first quarter.
What are you talking about?
It was early in the game. Sorry, my brain is just scrambled a little bit.
It's almost 1 a.m. at the link here, so...
Yeah, so... The second quarter, when he decided to go for it, they were at the Dallas 20. Josh Adams up the middle for a -3 loss.
It was weird.
I'm cool with going for it, but
that's not the call.
But you don't... That's not the call, right? I mean, look, you and I have advocated for Josh Adams the last 2 weeks. Still a really tough spot to put...
He's not really a goal line back either.
Right, I'd rather see, Carson Wentz...
If you're going to hand it off. But yeah, Carson Wentz, run up the middle. Like, do that screen pass that you love doing so much. Like, I never understand when coaches do that right up the middle, hand off to the running back, where he, like... It's on fourth down.
He wasn't proven enough to do it. And for me...
It's cool that they trust him, because they should, and he looked like the best running back again. But...
They're getting really cute with certain play calls, like so final drive of the second to final drive of the game, the 3rd and 2 call to run an outside pitch to Corey Clement. He loses 5 yards on the play, sets up 4th and 7. Wentz and Ertz connect for a 6-yard gain. If they don't run that you run that up the middle. I mean, it kind of contradicts what we're talking about here. But in that situation, I'm cool with it if it's 3rd and 2 and you know you're going to have 4 downs. Or an extra down after that to get you where you want to go. Look, there's going to be some excuses that come out of this game. And some of them are valid, some of them aren't. The secondary is just a mash unit. I mean, there is no... everyone's injured. Rasul Douglas... we've pumped him up and said, hey, you need playing time. He missed several tackles. The 3rd and 15 to Michael Gallup in the second half on that touchdown drive in the second in the second quarter. I mean, he let Gallup get behind him on a really short pass, and he picked up 25 yards.
I should say he was starting for Jalen Mills, who was out. Sidney Jones was out. Ronald Darby hurt his knee on a non-contact injury in the third quarter.
He was wearing a brace on his right knee.
He almost immediately was declared out. So the fact that the combination of it being non-contact and being immediately declared out is just not a good sign. On top of the fact that they're already banged up at corner and they're about to play against one of the best passing offenses in the NFL in the Saints. But... So he went out and they started playing Shandon Sullivan the rest of the game. Like, this is a dude who's on the practice squad 2 weeks ago.
I actually didn't think he was that terrible.
But I mean, there's no world where they should be in that position. When you have 3 cornerbacks injured, like that, but you can't make injuries as an excuse. Doug wasn't doing that after the game.
You can't.
He keeps saying, every time they lose, he's like, we have to look ourselves in the mirror. And he said that every single time they've lost. And somebody asked him, like, so you said that every time you guys have lost. Like, so what? So at this point in the season, like, is it fair to assume this is just what you guys are? He's like, well, if that's the case, then I guess we have to change who we are. Like, it just seems like
in week 10,
we're in week 10. Like, you can't. Something has to change. But what's taking so long? Like, what are they doing?
I don't know. This team just. I mean, you could talk about Jim Schwartz's play calling too.
I mean, they were doing they were holding the Cowboys to field goals every drive.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the issues.
It took till the second half, and they wore down a bit.
Yeah, a lot of the defensive struggles came from missed tackles.
I mean, the defensive line played pretty well. They slowed down again.
The line played really well.
They slowed down again once it got to the fourth, but I mean, Michael Bennett had 2 sacks. One of them he wasn't like I would have got a sack on the one he got because there was no blockers there. Chris Long had a sack. Brandon Graham had a sack. Fletcher Cox was his typically dominant self. And then I think just the backs. I mean, we'll get into position by position, but the back 7 was pretty inconsistent. And everybody always wants to jump on the defense, but I still think this team is 4-5 because of the offense.
I think they're 4-5 because of their inability to put together games. So they've given up two score leads.
2-2.
2-2.
The Panthers and the Titans game.
So, I mean, it's not all the offense, but I think This offense struggles, man, to score points, and it shouldn't. When you have the guy... Zach Ertz is having an all-world season.
He had 14 catches for 130 yards tonight and 2 touchdowns. But it's just... This offense just doesn't have energy. They don't play with energy anymore, man. Like, they didn't have a big play until that Nelson Aguilar throw was at late third quarter. 50-yard completion to Nelson Aguilar. That was the first time they've had a legit deep ball maybe this year. Like,
yeah, we've talked about it. I mean,
and maybe Aguilar's that guy, but they aren't throwing it down the field. Like they're doing this offense. Like in Carson Wentz. Here, maybe let's get into the position by position now. We'll start with Carson.
All right, cool.
So we got a lot of flack on after either our most recent episode or after the last post-game pod because people thought we were a little too critical of Carson because he struggled to start and then he got... we said he should be an MVP candidate, so I don't know if we were being too critical. But our point was, like, he was making a lot of his mistakes early in the game and it kind of was... This offense was stagnant and he wasn't helping. And that was, like, extrapolated over an entire half, really 2.5 quarters today, where he just did not look good.
Yeah, He
was missing guys. The interception, he eyed Zach Ertz, and Leighton Vander Esch was just standing there. He didn't see him, and it was like he was throwing to Vander Esch, even though it was like he had some kind of weird blindness where he couldn't see him. Like like there was a glitch in your Madden game.
Linebacker blindness.
Like he thought he appeared out of nowhere or something. It was just like an uncharacteristically bad Carson performance. He had like 100 yards passing in the first half, 1 interception, no touchdowns. I believe he was like 10 of. It was like 10 of 18 or something in the first half. And you can't just keep trying to, like Zach Ertz said earlier this week, we're not a team that's built to like, he basically admitted they're not a team that's built to have to come back all the time. They're a team that is better off having leads and trying to maintain them, even though that's probably not true based on the way they've played. But they have no excuse for not scoring in the first quarter with all the weapons they have, man.
No, I completely agree with you. He took some unnecessary hits in this game. I thought the offensive line played relatively well, considering Big V.
Vitae, yeah. He was blocking DeMarcus Lawrence, who's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL.
He did some really good
Only 2 sacks.
Right, only 2 sacks, and one of them was definitely...
One was Wentz's fault, and one was Jason Peters messing up.
Right. One was definitely on Carson. There were times where he looked skittish. He had 2 drives in this game that were Carson Wentz... That's a spicy meatball style performance. That's the thing.
His final stats look really good because he got like 200 yards in the fourth quarter, pretty much.
The thing is he'll have 2 drives where he looks like the best quarterback in the entire league, and then he'll have 2 drives.
He had 360 passing yards. I didn't even realize that.
Well, and he completed more than 70% of his passes again.
The final numbers don't illustrate how he played today.
And I feel like a lot of, we'll get flack for this episode too, I'm sure. But, because people will look at the numbers and they'll say, what do you want Carson to do? Well, score in the...
Finish drives,
score with regularity.
It's not enough to get to the red zone. You got to finish when you get there.
Right. It's absolutely ridiculous that a team could have Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, Carson Wentz, and not score as
Golden Tate. Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that later.
But the weapons are there.
Yeah, the weapons are there. Nelson Aguilar's better than he's
numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah, Zach Ertz.
14 of 16 targets. That's insane.
He wasn't there. Do you want to know why? Do you want to know why Carson Wentz is completing over 70% of his passes?
Because he's throwing it to Zach Ertz every time.
Right. That is why.
I was thinking this game. It seems like half of his catches every game too, he's like catching them just before they're about to hit the ground because he's getting, but he just doesn't drop anything, and he if you throw it in his area, he catches it. That's just,
it's an amazing transition that he's made because earlier on in his career, he was dropping passes, he was making mental errors.
Even earlier this year, he wasn't scoring, and now he's scoring. He has 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games.
He does that where he'll either start off really
fast. It's either
fast,
yards or touchdowns.
He's a very interesting.
But
guy.
His numbers this year are going to be it's going to be in a lost season maybe, but
well, he already had the most catches by a tight end in the first half of his season ever. So, I'm guessing that's going to go over pretty well now that he's got another 14 to add to his.
So, wrapping up Wentz, we were pretty disappointed in him. He was really good at the end, but, would you even grade him?
I think I give him a B- because I do think, I think he, you know what?
He brought them back into the game, but...
Yeah, it's...
I might have given him the C+, but B- is probably
Yeah, fair. I hovered kind of around
It's kind of around that range, yeah. But we were just talking about Ertz. Let's get into the pass catchers.
Yeah, sure.
So, for a while, I don't even know if it was the receiver. Alshon had a bad drop early in the game.
Yes.
Like, it was in his hands and he dropped it. Like, it was a tough play, but he should have caught it. I think that was in the first quarter.
Then he had a clear touchdown kind of overthrown by Wentz.
Yeah. And, I mean, Nelson Aguilar, that deep pass, if he can be their deep threat, then they have everything they need in terms of pass catchers. I mean, Jordan Matthews continues to look like just a solid piece. Like, he catches stuff that's thrown to him. He was making some big plays.
Yeah, shout out to, like...
Alshon didn't have his best night. That's the reality. But a lot of it was Wentz not being able to find him.
But I thought the Cowboys did a really good job in coverage against him. Guys talk about the other team getting paid too. I thought the Cowboys played relatively well in this game. They had some penalties that really hurt them. And then there were some mental errors. But they didn't turn the ball over. Ezekiel Elliott did what Ezekiel Elliott does, which is really impressive when you consider that the Eagles...
He had 151 yards. He hadn't been doing that this year.
Right, but you consider that the Eagles had only given up 50 yards to a rusher once this entire season, and then he just comes in and big boys them. And I just think, it's one of those things where I'm trying not to get too off topic.
Yeah, let's focus. Let's stay on the pass catchers.
But right, let's stay on the pass catchers, but I'm just saying the Cowboys did a good job.
Yeah, you're giving them credit. I get what you're saying.
From a coverage standpoint, I thought they did pretty well.
So, one guy we haven't mentioned yet is Golden Tate. I mentioned we'd talk about him. Doug kind of implied this week that maybe don't jump the gun and assume he's going to
be careful.
And that clearly was the case. He didn't even start the game. Matthew started ahead of him. They had a package of plays for him, and when he went in there, it was almost obvious they were going to him some of the time, which kind of negated his effectiveness. He was their main punt returner, which probably isn't ideal for a guy in his first game with a new team. He's still learning the playbook, but they didn't really have any other options there. I don't know what they're going to do in the punt return going forward. That's not as big of a deal as a lot of their other problems. But, I mean, it's not like he was bad, but they weren't targeting him and he didn't really play. I'm curious to see how many snaps he played.
Yeah, I mean, and when he did play, it's tough. You're asking this guy to come in and immediately impact the offense. I know everybody was super excited about what he could do for the offense, but realistically, one guy's not going to make that much of a difference unless he's a quarterback. And, a lot of people... You and I both kind of said, I wonder if Doug's telling the truth by kind of hedging the bets on him. Maybe he's just trying to be strategic, whatever. Nope. They really didn't use him all that often, and I don't blame them on that. That's not a failure on their part. You didn't trade a third-round pick just to...
They didn't lose tonight because they didn't give Golden Tate the ball enough.
Correct. The lateral stuff, though, that was interesting. I don't know what... whatever. Anyway,
let's go running backs.
Okay.
So they were down the entire game, so they weren't going to run it that much. That's the reality.
Right.
But Josh Adams was almost obviously their number one running back tonight, right?
Yeah, and he'll be the number one guy moving forward.
He had a 29-yard rush. That was the longest rush of the season for the team. He's had, I think, if he doesn't have the most, he's right up there for the most 20-plus yard runs this season. He looked pretty good. He wasn't great, but he was his first full workload. He had 7 carries for 47 yards. That's pretty good. And I think you can feel pretty good about him being your lead guy.
Yeah, and I think he's shown a lot of maturity after a lot of these games. I spoke to him in the locker room. He's got a very good perspective on what he wants to get out of, the first couple of plays and the drives and building momentum and stuff like that. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and I think he's got a lot of talent. So we'll see where he goes from there. He was put in a really rough spot, though, on that 4th and 1 in the second quarter.
It shouldn't have been him. Clement, he was running better, but, his final numbers look as bad as they have last few weeks. 5 carries, 13 yards. He had 1 catch for negative 5 yards, which was a pretty key moment, if I remember correctly. Right?
Yeah, he's Corey Clement looked healthier. We talked about it. I don't know how much he's banged up. He just looks like he's running better nowadays. Wendell Smallwood.
He was a little more phased out of the offense this week, which is probably the right move.
Who, Smallwood?
Smallwood. Yeah, he had 2 carries, 4 yards, fine. 3 catches, 30 yards. He's their pass catcher. Mm-hmm. It's pretty clear he's their pass catching back. I thought Clement might have become that, but maybe he hasn't shown them enough in practice or something. I don't know. But
I think it's just very clear that
the running backs weren't bad. They weren't great. They're not the reason why they won. They would have won, and they're not the reason why they did lose.
Yeah, I think if anything, they were kind of a product of circumstance, and I do find it very disheartening that they really do not score on the run. The running game is just if you're one-dimensional in the red zone, you're probably going to get stopped more often than not because teams know you're not going to run it consistently in the red zone. You know what I mean? So you're putting a lot of weight on Carson Wentz's shoulders. You're putting a lot of weight on the wide receiver's shoulders. You're putting the coverage unit in pretty good position because if you can get to the quarterback from the defensive line perspective, I think you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. We meant so the running game wasn't great. It was fine, as we said, but I mean that kind of ties in a little bit to the offensive line. On that 1 yard run on fourth down, the offensive line weren't holding their blocks, and they kind of got to Josh Adams right away. It wasn't necessarily his fault.
Correct.
And the offensive line didn't do a great job on that. But overall, they played pretty well. I didn't notice Vaitai messing up really too bad, which is usually the sign of Halapuli Vaitai game is him messing up. Especially when he plays, he has to play the best pass rushers in the league a lot of the time. They only had 2 sacks. They had 5 quarterback hits. I mean, you have to be pretty okay, especially with Lane Johnson not playing. Jason Peters banged up. Jason Peters was out there, like, leading a charge a few times, like Jason Peters of old. You didn't hear Jason Kelsey or Brandon Brooks' name like we never do because they're the most consistent offensive linemen, like, in the league. Mm-hmm. I think you come out of that feeling pretty good. Considering that's been one of their weaknesses this season, I think you feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I think this offensive line's fine. I don't think they're good. I don't think they're great. I think they're fine as an overall unit. And for me, they're not the problem. They aren't the issue. There's so many other issues with this offense, and I think they've kind of put it together over the last couple of weeks, as far as the offensive line continuity and stuff like that. They're keeping Carson a little bit more clean in the pocket. But moving on to the defensive side of the ball, we mentioned it earlier. I thought the defensive line played pretty well, especially early on. Mike Bennett, he's like the one acquisition, non-draft wise, that I think's really been a boom for this Eagles team.
He's probably been like their 3rd, 4th best defensive player this season, after Fletcher and Malcolm Jenkins, probably.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Like in terms of consistency and level of impact when he makes his plays, like
we were calling him the first half MVP.
He still gets most of his production in the first half, but he was playing well in the second half.
Yeah, that third quarter sack on Dak Prescott
he lit him up.
Gave them some momentum.
He had 4 hits.
I mean, he's a guy that I think has performed very, very well. And that's been tough because you have so many veterans in there that look like they've kind of lost a step, like Brandon Graham and.
Not had a tackle for loss tonight.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
But overall,
I don't remember that happening.
I thought they did pretty well. There were some run issues, but I put that a lot on the linebackers because there were times where linebackers had them dead to rights and they would just break tackles or they would take them for some extra yardage. I thought the linebackers didn't play very well. In coverage, I didn't think they played particularly well against the run. Probably didn't help that their safeties were basically interchangeable and keep constantly moving. Jordan Hicks said that there's no excuse for it, but they did not have a good performance. When you talk about the secondary, we touched on it earlier, it seems like everybody's banged up in that secondary. Like, Malcolm Jenkins is the only durable one, and Malcolm Jenkins surrounded by a bunch of, third stringers is probably not ideal. As good as he is at times. Or great as he is at times. Shandon Sullivan getting some playing time. Trey Sullivan getting some playing time.
Trey Sullivan had he got the football version of a posterization when he just like froze. It was like he looked real. He just like Ezekiel Elliott was running at him.
It was like in slow motion,
and he like he froze. Like I've never seen. You've probably seen it, but you should look it up. Like he froze. Ezekiel Elliott just jumped over him, and like I joked that Trey Sullivan just retired after that play. Yeah. Like, because he can't come back. Like, it was bad. And that was just, from there, Zeke just, like, took off. Like, that almost was, like, the launching off point for him. Yeah. Weirdly, because he launched into the air, but.
And, Trey Sullivan, credit to him, he answered questions about it.
Did he?
Several minutes, yes.
And he acknowledged that play in particular?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What did he say happened?
No, he just said, it's just a play I kind of want back. I don't recall the entire quote off the top of my head, but it was just, he was like, yeah, no, I know. I get it.
He's aware, yeah.
Yeah, we get it.
So, we haven't talked that much about the linebackers. They've kind of been non-existent for a few weeks. Jordan Hicks hasn't really I don't know the last time he made a big play.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's kind of been under the radar. I mean, the linebackers aren't a big part of this defense, but like you need them. If somebody's making plays, it should be them.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think Jordan Hicks and Nigel Bradham both didn't play all that well in coverage. I think Camus had a near interception, kind of bobbled. He's got a hand issue or a thumb issue.
It was bad. Like, and it almost was made worse by the way he dropped it. Whoa, and then he went out of bounds and didn't get it. Like,
it's like
it was bad.
It's like when you see like young kids play volleyball basically by themselves. It was just kind of like.
I mean that it almost. If not a pick six, it would have put them like within the 10-yard line. Like, and then they got a first down like the next play. Like, it was that was bad.
It's frustrating because
they don't get many of those opportunities this season.
You can tell how frustrating it is for the defense because they feel like they have a really good unit. They're just not able to create turnovers, and that's the name of the game in this NFL when teams are throwing 40 to 50 times a game, and you have to. I mean, I believe they only have 4 interceptions on the season. I want to say
sounds about right.
So, like, when when you're stopping teams from scoring touchdowns after interceptions by your offense, you should be winning these games. I mean, the Eagles have had 13 turnovers, and the defense has only given up 31 points. Like, that's pretty impressive. Still, I mean, you've got to be able to take it back for your offense, and the Eagles just don't do that consistently enough. Let's talk about the decision to move Avonte Maddox to nickel and use Trey Sullivan.
I don't know if they really had a choice.
Corey Graham. I brought up that choice in earlier in the week. I did a kind of a grouping of what they could do. They didn't even put LeBlanc out there. Like, it was.
Well, I told you I didn't think there was no way he was going to be ready or good enough to play right away, and that was pretty obvious.
Right, but when you're moving a guy who's excelled at free safety into nickel, and you've got Corey Graham, who just he has really lost a step. He does not look good. He even kind of mentioned earlier in the week that he was more comfortable playing strong safety, and you got him playing single high. That's rough. Trey Sullivan in there, who's never played serious snaps. You're just putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I mean, I guess you were damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I don't think it would have done much if LeBlanc was in there.
Oh no, I don't think so either. But I think there were other solutions than moving guy who.
What other solutions?
I mean, I'd rather have Trey Sullivan playing nickel than playing high.
Yeah, but he hasn't played nickel at all since he's been in the NFL. And
he really hasn't played free safety either, though. I mean,
he's played safety. He hasn't played any cornerback since he stepped on an NFL field.
I just don't think you hurt yourself in one area to kind of.
Well, then they would have just been hurt at the slot still. Like, it wouldn't have helped them.
I mean,
Maddox did pretty well in the slot for them tonight.
Yeah, I thought he did fine, but I thought the safeties were
moving
terrible.
Starting Trey Sullivan at nickel cornerback would not have helped.
I don't know. I just I don't think it was advantageous. That's all I'm saying.
But you're saying it like there was another option though. I'm trying to figure out what there was.
I'm not saying that it was like a perfect option. I'm just saying I wouldn't have done it. That's all I'm saying.
What would you have done though?
I probably excuse me. I probably would have moved Malcolm Jenkins to nickel and had Graham plays.
Graham and Maddox start at safety.
And I would have had Graham be the strong safety because he straight up said, hey, I'm more comfortable playing this. It's the role he played whenever Malcolm Jenkins moved around last year. That, to me, makes sense. So, I mean, I think that's the logical move. Then again, do you want Jenkins, who's not that quick, on Cole Beasley? I think you were damned if you do, damned if you don't. But just from my perspective,
I mean, the fact that these are their best options just says everything right now.
You just put so much on this kid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so much, and to have him move around and then communicate and do it's just a lot.
I agree.
Special teams.
Let's run through that real quick. So Jake Elliott, he's getting back to being his old self. He made a 56-yard field goal. It would look good. Cameron Johnson did not look great on at least his first punt.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's still he got that Australian bounce.
Technically landed inside the 20, but it was
both of his punts inside the 20.
But
he's quietly having a really good year.
Returns were whatever. There wasn't anything to talk about there really. But
Golden Tate, used as the punt returner.
Yeah, I mean,
he was whatever.
Yeah, he was whatever. I mean, DeAndre Carter was more productive, but I mean, that, like we said,
that ship sailed.
They didn't lose because of not having DeAndre Carter tonight.
Right.
So it was play calling, it was Wentz, it was all the other stuff we talked about. The defense not being able to hold things down. But yeah, so, sorry, I'm losing my voice, it sounds like. But, so the Eagles are 4-5. The Cowboys are 4-5. The Redskins are 6-3.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles are going to New Orleans to play the Saints. I'm not sure who the Cowboys and Redskins are playing coming up, but from when I researched this a couple weeks ago, their schedules were easier than the Eagles. Top to bottom.
That's what happens when you
the rest of the way.
You win the division.
Yeah,
and you gotta.
So, not only do the Eagles need to win most of their games the rest of the way, they need the Redskins to lose most of their games the rest of the way. The Eagles aren't making the playoffs as a wild card team. Like, that's obvious.
Yeah,
would we say they needed to go at least 4-2 in the division?
Yeah.
So they already got one of those losses now?
Yes, they got
at home to the Cowboys? Like, you can't lose at home in the division.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
They're dire straits, man. Dire straits.
I don't know if they're dire straits yet, but they lose to New Orleans, which seems like a very...
But NFL's weird, so who the hell knows?
Right, exactly.
If they beat the Saints next week, maybe, all right, they're winning the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, this team has struggled to put two together back-to-back, but there have been times where they've been able to wrestle. I mean, you never know. I mean,
they have to have their best game of the season.
Seattle almost beat the Rams. I mean,
they have to have their best game of the season if they're winning on Sunday.
Pretty much. I mean, I think the Saints are winning the Super Bowl, or at least getting to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. So it's going to be a tough challenge. There's no doubt about it. We'll preview it a little bit more later in the week. But where do you stand on this team? Like, give me your short summary of like where do you think this team is at right now?
They're in a bad place right now. I don't think the locker room's splintering, but I'm a little concerned the way they talk after these losses. And you have some guys during the week who not directly have been complaining about their role, but have kind of like hinted that they don't love their role, and they just didn't have this last year. Like, just something's off about this team. Their offense doesn't finish drives. Their defense plays well for spurts, but when by the end of the game they're worn out and they give up big plays, and I don't see this team making the playoffs as I see here right now.
Yeah, I don't either. I think this is an 8-8 team. That's what happens when you exchange losses and wins like they are doing. I do think losing Frank Reich and DeFilippo really had some effect. You can't say it didn't, because they're the only two things.
I think it had a lot of. I think people are almost underselling how big of an impact.
I mean, you look at what he's doing with Andrew Luck, and
DeFilippo's doing a great job with Kirk Cousins too.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where a good head coaches hire really good assistants, and that's what Doug Pederson did when he first got here. It's how he's evolved. I mean, obviously, Super Bowl hangover, you're going to lose guys to better jobs. But this just not gone the way the Eagles needed it to go. And this roster's beaten up, it's banged up, it's old. It's feeling kind of old, right? I mean, like old guys in key spots and then really young guys in key spots.
The guys who shouldn't be playing young.
Right.
I wonder if they make Mike Rowe, in quotes, scapegoat at the end of the season. Like, I don't know how much impact he has on this. I just don't think he has any impact on it. And I think Doug needs to bring in a guy who he trusts in the words he's telling him, that has his ear.
Yeah,
I don't think Mike Rowe is that guy.
I kind of agree with that. I
don't necessarily think they need to, but I don't know. I think they need to bring in somebody at the least. If you don't fire Grow or you reassign him back to receivers or something.
I'm curious to see what happens with Jim Schwartz because, I don't think the unit's played poorly. I think Schwartz gets a lot more disdain than he probably deserves.
They still have one of the best scoring defenses in the NFL. I mean, they gave up 27 tonight, but before that, they were top 5.
Right. And again, they are not giving up points off turnovers, which is it's an impressive stat. They're also a really good run defense this night, notwithstanding. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Corey Udlin was a guy that kind of felt the wrath of this season. They're not making the key plays on special teams that they were a couple of years ago. But overall, all I'll say is – this team lacks an identity, and teams that lack identities lose.
I agree. I think the
I think that's a good place to kind of cut us off.
The team with no identity.
Give him your spiel.
All right. Guys, thanks for listening. I know this was a tough loss. We hope you still keep on listening, even if as the Eagles fall into oblivion this season. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that dire. They still have a chance.
Remember, they won a Super Bowl, too.
Wait, they did?
Yeah, they did. Go figure, right? It feels like a million years ago.
Man, this doesn't feel like it's crazy. Okay. So, yeah. As always, we didn't get as many comments this week, but leave us comments. We'll read them on the air. Follow us on all the apps, or subscribe, I should say. We're on iHeartRadio, YouTube, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud. Follow us on Twitter, and thanks for listening, guys.